for the purpose of this talk, I can tell you that you can recreate this near-death experience by meditating. I learned that by learning to quiet my mind, and it took a few years of practice, that I could learn to leave this body behind, astral project, out-of-body experience, whatever you want to call it, and go home and go into this infinite white light of love. And I made it inside this beautiful sphere of infinite dimensions. It's beautiful white light. And all you feel is love, peace, and joy. There's no more concept of rod. There's no more fear. There's no concept of time or body. So you can have a near-death experience by meditating. It's just you don't have to go through the suffocation or dying or the trauma. It's a much easier way to do this. But you learn there's more to life than what your human eyes and senses are showing you. You get to this is a desire and a commitment to know the divine, to know that there's more than life. In humanity, we have several different forms of religions and therefore several different gods. That's not what I'm talking about. In your heart, there's divine love. The meditation I used, I had no formal training. I would read spiritual literature in the morning, have a cup of coffee, which I'm not supposed to do, I guess, sit down in a chair and get very comfortable and close my eyes and just say to myself, Father, reveal yourself. I want to feel you. I want to know you. I never asked for anything specific. My mantra was always peace, or a thought would come and I'd just bring peace and I'd stay centered on this. Eventually, I started to have the experiences of the divine is always calling me home. And I said, yes to this loving presence. Then God reaches out, the divine reaches out and pulls you in to the heart. You can't do it humanly. You can only go so far. But then if you stay open in your mind, I'm willing to practice. I do mini meditations. I do half-hour formal meditations, but I open myself to the mind that what if there's more to life? And what if there's a divine presence that's calling me home? And I say yes. I let go of the fear. The divine will take you and bring you in and hold you.
We're all spiritual beings. We're not physical beings. We are spiritual beings having a physical activity with dirt and water that we call our bodies. And we're just illuminating those bodies. And so the next several years of my life, I really devoted to learning, I got to heal, I've got to recover, I've got to do some inner work. I've got to figure out how to get back to that. What was that? Who am I when I'm not attached to the body? And how can I reconnect with that and still live my life? And so I started studying quantum healing, quantum physics a little bit. I dabbled in that, but I got certified in quantum healing. And as I went down that road, I started to realize that what my teachers were teaching me was how to have an NDE that was not an out-of-body experience, but a deep inner body experience. And I started to learn how to replicate spirit travel and higher levels of consciousness and going to heaven and communicating with angels and talking to my ancestors and visiting with the dead through the veil, but not by popping out of my body. I learned how to do it by going deep inside of my body. And that ultimately is what healed my physical body of 25 years of autoimmune illness. And so it was a powerful awakening to realize we cannot suppress the true identity of who we really are as divine beings.
If you really want to experience freedom and love and peace and joy, as in source itself, you have to own what is arising within you. So you have to own it, number one. Number two, you have to stop thinking. And you're like, well, come on, Wendy, how the hell am I going to stop thinking? It's nearly all the time. That's okay. I'm not saying to do that. Just to realize that the thinking mind, that initial layer, that we said we have awareness of, is not what's really going on. And it doesn't really have the solutions that we're looking for either. And that's what we have to realize. So in stop thinking, really, it's like realize that the thinking has not got the resolution that you're seeking. And so then number 3 is you start feeling. So instead of thinking, and I'm doing it here because it feels like thinking happens in the brain, doesn't it? Who really knows where the mind is? But so thinking, come instead to the body so that you can start feeling. And actually, usually that's what we're avoiding, is a feeling. So start feeling and realize you can feel anything. There's nothing to be afraid of. But we've built these things up to be big things. So you start to make friends with your emotions through feeling. And then step 4 is you breathe and observe. So you want to almost like come up, and imagine if you could come up and out a bit of the body. Don't disappear off, but that you are looking down on it. So you're just creating some distance, because again, commonly when the feelings fire, we're in them. And I used to describe that like if you imagined a teacup and full of liquid, and the liquid was the emotions, and it's like we're flailing around in the liquid. But imagine if you could just hop up and sit on the edge of the teacup and just observe the liquid with no judgment. And again, commonly with emotions, we're trying to get rid of half of them. I don't want to feel sad. I don't want to feel shame. I don't want to feel guilt. I don't want to feel resentment. I'm pretending I don't have those things. So we have to get like, that is all beautiful. It's all energy. And that we're happy and willing to feel any of it. And that is what brings us into flow. So own it, stop thinking, start feeling, breathe and observe. Those are the 4 steps. It's so simple that you won't believe it's as simple as that. But it really does work when you get it. It just creates, because it opens up then the source itself. It opens up that wisdom to you, as opposed to staying in the thinking mind, which is itself the problem. And like Einstein said, you can't solve a problem with the same level of thinking that created it. So you need new thinking to come in. And you can't get that while you're whirling around at that level of thought.
The core essence of who we are lives forever. But sometimes people contact me. Some of them are suicidal. And I am not qualified. I don't know what to tell people like that. It's like I'm not qualified to really handle that situation. People can get really depressed. It happens to everybody. And one of the many things I learned from my near-death experience is how to be in the present moment, how to be now. That's really where I find my peace. I think when I get upset about something, my anxiety is in direct proportion to my inability to be with what is right now, right? But when I am in the present moment, I'm there. I'm a musician. I've been gigging musician my entire adult life. I still play. And when I'm playing music, the world disappears. I'm only in the moment. No past, no future, just right there. And there are other ways. Not everybody can play music, but there are other ways that we can do this. Something with rhythm, like people who meditate will tell you that it's your breath. It's the rhythm of your breath is where you'll find that present moment awareness. And it takes repetition and practice, a lot of it. But I know that it's there. There are other ways, like maybe you've had a brilliant athletic performance that you've done. That's when you're in the present moment only, right? I get it when I walk. When I first started walking, I was thinking, I'm gonna need to lose weight. But it didn't take me long to figure out that I love to walk. There's a rhythm and a pulse, step after step after step. It's like a trance. And that's those places that we can find peace. I get it when I cook. I'm not in my head anymore. I'm not thinking, just in the present moment. And in my near-death experience, there was a point where I released, I let go, and that's when the white light opened up and all the blissful things happened. And that's where we find peace, when we release, when we get to the point where we're not thinking anymore, that's where we'll find our peace. And that's available to everybody. Anyone can do that. Try walking. Find the rhythm. There are times when I'm playing music. This might sound odd because when we think of playing music, we're playing notes, right? Musical notes. But there are also intervals between the notes. There's empty space between this note and that note. Sometimes I'm playing notes and it's a trance-like state. I can flip my brain and I am playing those holes between the notes. I'm playing holes. It's just such a cool thing. And that's part of the dualistic nature of everything. There's note, there's not note. And it only is a note compared to the silence in between them. There's a lot of peace there. I can also do it when I'm painting. I'm actually a wood carver, I'm not a painter. I carve things out of what you've probably seen my work before at Disneyland and Walt Disney World. Those are where most of my wood carvings are. And I found out that everything happens now. We have this idea that the present moment is created by the past. Like, because I got up this morning, I went for a walk, and then I had a bite to eat, and then I did this interview with you, that this interview is happening because of these events in the past. I found out it doesn't work that way at all. It's not a series of events. Everything happens now. Matter of fact, if you look at it the right way, the experience felt like the opposite. The present moment creates the past, which is really weird, but it's true. We can do an experiment right now, and I'll show you. It's like, I'm going to snap my fingers, okay? That snap is now in the past, but it happened now. We create the past by what we do right now. Pretty trippy, but that is true. So when we can find those now moments, that's where we'll find our greatest peace. Create your past with what you do right now.
What we learned was that meditation will lead to an experience which is very similar or the same experience as near-death experience. What happens in near-death experience is you lose all your senses. All your senses are gone, and once the senses are dropped, there's the time your mind stops, because mind is all related to your senses, right? Whatever experiences we have now, in the past, and in the meditation, again, when you sit down, you try to observe yourself, your own mind, right? And you will watch your mind working, all the thoughts, and that's the time your mind drops. Am I making sense?
Yes. Yes.
Like, it is kind of like you turn on the light and the darkness goes away. Once you start observing yourself, observing your mind, automatically your mind goes away, your thoughts go away, once you have become aware of your mind, right? So the same thing happens in near-death experience, that your sensory power is gone, your mind is gone, and there's a time you're talking to your consciousness straight, or you are in touch with your consciousness straight, and the similar experience happens in meditation.
When I think about who I am, I don't feel like I'm Anne. I feel like I'm the soul. I'm a soul that's here as Anne in this lifetime. So now I say I'm just occupying Anne. You know, I love her, I appreciate her, And I know she's doing the best she can. And God bless her, you know. She's not perfect, and maybe my soul isn't perfect. I don't know the answer to that, but I believe that I'm here to learn many things, not just to learn how to be a better person. And recently, I was reading a book and it said, just meditate on your soul. You can ask your soul any questions you want. So I just meditated on to contact my eternal soul, wherever it is. See, I think it's bigger than just in my body. I think maybe part of it is still over there. I don't really know that, my higher self. But my soul is so much more connected to that side, to the rest of the invisible world, than my body is able to receive. But by meditating on my eternal soul, I could feel something very powerful within me, and I felt like I was touching something beyond.
And I found that the experience of this world is made not from here, but from the other side, which is essentially source consciousness. Everything here is created in consciousness, by consciousness, with consciousness. And that consciousness creates through love. So everything is created in love, by love, with love. Now, we have three aspects to consciousness. We have our physical aspect of consciousness, which we call the thinking brain. For those of us who learn to meditate, there is awareness, which is the doorway between the world of time and the world of no time, which is the moment. So we've got thinking brain, we've got awareness, and we've got unconditional love from source, and then we've got pure consciousness. We can create from any of these aspects of consciousness. A lot of us create from the thinking brain, which is known as ego. So a lot of what we experience and go through in this world is generated from the egoic perception. Once we learn to get in touch with the other aspects of consciousness, namely awareness and we'll say consciousness, we can create from there. We can also create from love, which, as I've been shown and taught, is the most creative aspect of consciousness. So when we love something, we create a world that is quite different to an unloving world. It's a world of connection, it's a world of empathy, and it's a world of understanding, which I've been shown is what we're being asked to come back to, is that world of conscious creation through a loving, connected presence. I didn't really do a lot of with the experience till later on in life, after I had the accident, because once I had the accident, 27, I'd be laid up for long periods of time. So I had time to reflect while I was, in bed, sometimes for periods of up to 3 months. So I had a lot of reflection time. This is where I learned to meditate and go back to the near-death experience. Nobody had told me you couldn't do it. So I did. I went back there. I went beyond the veil and started investigating what was there, which is where I learned a lot more about what life's about, the meaning of life, the purpose of life, which is essentially finding our creation within the life stream. We're all created from source consciousness. And in that creation, we are created with both purpose and intent. And the purpose is to be the fullest expression of that consciousness that we are. It's not necessarily an outward purpose, even though there can be outward aspects to it. It's an inner connection both with ourselves and the world in which we are created, because it's all part of the same consciousness. And this is what I've spent a lot of my life doing. Along the way, it's given me abilities. We can call them psychic abilities, various other things. But I still find what we think of as psychic abilities, where it's clairvoyance, it's just another aspect of seeing. If it's clairaudient, it's just another aspect of hearing. It's just extended beyond the physical sense, which is feeling. You can pick up on other people's thoughts and feelings. We're able to do that anyway. It's just beyond the physical senses. What I've found is that the thinking brain has a range of senses, which we call taste, smell, hearing, touch, and we're used to those. Those are the ones we think of. When we go to awareness, it has its own range of sensations and perceptions. When we learn to go through awareness into consciousness, it also has its own range of senses and perceptions, as does the love energy, which is the energy that was first created by source consciousness, through which everything else is created. That unconditional love has its range of perceptions and sensations. So we've got various ranges of perceptions that we can have that are outside the brain consciousness, which are all accessed through the moment, which is where I've learned to spend a lot of time. Having been laid up, I just went exploring. I went to find what was there, what I could do with it, what it was about. And it still shows me the thing to do. The most important thing and most important mission we've got is to be in the present moment, within our own experience of this moment.
I do think mindfulness and meditation are so healing and valuable. I think there's many different forms of meditation. However, we live in this society where we are constantly focused on the future, on efforting and changing things externally. Whereas I love what mindfulness does is it helps you get in touch with what you're feeling, with your breath, with the thoughts, the distractions that might come up, and it expands your sense of reality. So, the way I kind of look at time is almost like, a spiral or kind of a circle. And the more we dip into that center point, there's incredible power being in this place where there's less, how should I say, less movement, less rushing. There's stillness, and there's access to just incredible experiences if we only allowed ourselves the time to really slow down and connect and heal. I like to do a mindfulness meditation that involves different skills. So deep breathing, grounding, so really feeling present in my physical body, as well as, progressive muscle relaxation. So going through each part of my body to relax it, clearing my mind, of distractions. And then also visualization is very powerful. We know that the placebo effect is an effect that they account for in experimental studies, which is that influence of our minds to influence our bodies in a positive way just by thinking that something is going to do that. So we can use visualization as a way to also heal our bodies. There's so many amazing tools out there that can help people, again, have access to this incredible self-healing abilities. I mean, yes, we all need help at certain times in our lives, but there's just so much. I get so excited. There's so much to be gained from exploring these healing modalities, and many of them are ancient. Reiki is a really powerful form of healing as well, and there's a reality, to that kind of energy and these experiences that's powerful.
One of the most important things that a human can and should do is to know themselves. The person must find themselves, and then find the God within themselves and by themselves. That's an important thing to do. You want to, it's a person's natural and highest inclination to get to know the invisible part of them, that spirit self, that soul. It's really our soul, because the spirit is the personality of the soul. Like they say, he's such a spirited young man. So the spirit, and we have a spirit body, but the spirit is literally our personality of our soul, and it's our soul that lives on eternally. So what the person wants to do is get to know the other side of themselves. Just like we have two minds, our conscious and subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind, the inner mind, that's the awake mind of the spirit body. And through meditation, through dreams, and even through just thinking into yourself inside your own head, you can get in contact with that nonverbal, silent, invisible you who has more power and is waiting to help you with anything you need. And the person has to learn how to communicate with that nonverbal side of them. And through dreams is a good way, and through the meditations when you're half awake and half asleep. So the person wants to unite with that spiritual self. And you can practice this right in the dreams, where every night you're getting in touch with your spirit self. And if you want to know something, you can go to sleep, tell yourself, I want to know this, I need an answer to this question. And then let it go. And as you sleep, your spirit body will go out and move heaven and earth to give you what you want. Also, we were made in such a way that we can't have anything in this world that we want, especially if you go along that mystic path of inner self-development, meditation, working on the dreams, the out-of-bodies. And when the person gets to the out-of-body stage, meditation, dreams, out-of-body, then the psychic experiences that they had at nighttime will begin to happen in the daytime too. And so you work on the sight or the spiritual side of you at night. And after you get to the out-of-body level, then you'll start having psychic experiences in the daytime or 24/7. And that's when you'll be living in both worlds at the same time, where the person will, while awake, be listening for messages from the invisible world. And then while asleep, will be looking for messages from the real world. So that's your real self. And when the two of you meet, just like it says in the Bible, subconscious and conscious mind, then you can have everything, anything in this world that you want. But by the time you get to that level, there's little things in this world that you want, because all those really valuable things are invisible and you can't touch them, but you can build them up inside yourself and make yourself a complete self-actualized 360-degree person.
The last thing that I recall is I was energetically moving and the vibration was starting to change and the popping was starting to return. The gardenia and all the smells and the angelic sounds were starting to become more muted. The pink was getting less and less. Was the angels guiding me? And what I was told to me was the most profound message that I brought back with me, which is our only role here is to breathe and not resist. Such a powerful, packed thing to bring home. And it has continued to unravel since 2008 in understanding experientially what that meant. Breathe and don't resist. Breathe and don't resist. Breathe and don't resist. The rest is taken care of. It's become the mantra that plays in the mind at times that seem tough. So I had interactions with what I now refer to as life angels, earth angels, aspects of others who just kept reminding me to remember to trust that I'm seen, I'm heard, I'm loved. I'm not alone in this earth experience. I have the utmost support, that this is all determined that I would have this type of support and that I could go forward. And there was no mission other than to love and to breathe and not resist. The rest would be taken care of. My only role here is to breathe and not resist. The rest is unfolding perfectly. You are loved, you are love. And this is all showing up as intended. Experience. Be in this moment and experience it fully. And that's what I continue to do.
Well, I have a number of tools that I use for myself. I think meditation is probably the basic, most important thing. I have, if anyone's interested, I have some YouTube videos about the tools I use to clear myself. I do Tai Chi Cha. It's a specific type of Tai Chi. And the type of meditation that I do brings in, it's it's peaceful for a little while, but it really brings a lot of energy into the body for healing. And sometimes it's quite intense, actually.
You know, this infinite, all-powerful creative source and that orb of light and my conscious awareness. This was consciousness far beyond the limited consciousness of Eben Alexander. This was the consciousness we all share, far deeper, far more profound, a direct link to divine, which is in each and every one of us. And you don't have to have a near-death experience to come to know this. Deep meditation and centering prayer, that's why I do so much of the work with sacred acoustics, is to help take that to the next level and help people to meditate in a much deeper fashion, because that is how we can come to know these much deeper truths.
But if one is willing to fully be alert and to feel everything and to be fully present with reality, those larger parts of ourselves can rise up all on their own. And then they're just there. They always were there. It's just we were so deeply associated with the story that we couldn't see them. So I personally feel that so people say, so what's the activity I can do? What can I do? Well, it's not really an activity, but if you want to name one, it's meditation, because meditation is simply setting aside the time to investigate very objectively, rigorously. Go look at your awareness. Go explore what consciousness is when not lost in the story, not associated with the constant thinking. You know, when someone can know what they are without the thinking is like dreams. Thoughts are like dreams. You know, we associate with this thought and the whole day. You know, I'm thinking this, I'm thinking this, I'm thinking this. And by the time the day's done, we had about 1,000 dreams, all these individual thoughts. It's all I am, and we hurt and we're suffering because we're associating with all these thoughts. Well, it can be then beneficial to spend time associating with the deeper awareness that knows the thoughts, because if we do that all on its own, our higher nature can just kind of gradually rise up, and we gain experiential familiarity that we are not our thoughts. And there is an incredible freedom in that.
But I should mention that I was trained as a materialist neuroscientist in my graduate days. And I found that though that was intriguing, and I did a lot of work in rehabilitation medicine, helping people with stroke and Parkinson's disease and children with cerebral palsy, for example, gain their balance and strength and walking abilities again, it wasn't as satisfying as I had hoped. And what happened to me is when I was about 30 years old, I had an amazing spiritual awakening experience. And I'll just tell you briefly about it because it really changed my life. I had been invited by my sister to a meditation retreat, and I was intrigued by it, but I was a neuroscientist and I was skeptical, but I decided to attend. And what happened is on the first day of the retreat, the meditation master who was leading the retreat, telling us that we would be all initiated. He would be initiating every individual there. And the initiation was described as a spiritual awakening. And it was to happen through this meditation teacher's touch. So I was skeptical, but I was curious, and I decided I was there for the weekend, so why not go ahead and just see what happened? And so what happened is when he came to me, my eyes were closed, but my senses were otherwise fully engaged. So when I felt his fingers touching my bridge of my nose right between the eyes, I had this utter certainty about the event. And when that happened, what I felt was a current which felt like electricity, or almost like a mini lightning bolt, go from his fingers right from the point between my eyes down into the center of my chest. And I could feel that exact point where it stopped, and I began feeling this place in my heart that felt like this expansion of love and joy that was like permeating my whole being and beyond. And I remember at that moment, what I said to myself is, oh, I'm home. I'm home. My heart is my home. It felt like I'd finally awakened to something inside of me that was much bigger than what I really knew my own reality to be. Now, what happened after that, I think, was equally phenomenal. I went back home to my university teaching position in Virginia. And the next morning, spontaneously, I got up and I meditated. And I did this day after day after day. And it was because I knew that just beneath the surface of my awareness simmered this quiet ecstasy. And I tapped it once, but I felt it was just waiting for me right underneath that awareness that I was usually in. So that really changed now my way of looking at the world. And I asked this question as a neuroscientist. I said, am I just living in a Newtonian world of cause and effect, and brain is the cause of my consciousness? Or is there something more? Is it possible that consciousness could actually be fundamental or primary? And so over the next many years, I began gradually to shift my research to that area. And by the end of my regular career at the university, I was now exploring meditation, and I was exploring near-death experiences and other things of that sort.
I did a pretty good job of paying tithe to God over the years, especially recently. And one day I was just impressed that I should start tithing my time. So I set the alarm every day for 2.5 hours. And I read the Bible. I read other religious books. I studied nature. I prayed a lot. And I started listening for God. I mean, you can pray all day long, but if you get up and walk away and go do something else, God may be trying to connect with you and talk with you and respond to your prayer. So after I prayed, I would meditate and be silent and just listen and try to leave my mind open for God to enter information and words into my mind. And so I did this for months and months, and I felt like it was working for me. I learned how to seemingly be in a constant state of prayer with God throughout my day, no matter what I was doing. And it felt good. So one day in my meditation, I finished praying and I started to meditate. And I looked at the clock and I noticed what time it was. And I was really restless. You know, oh, this is not working. I can't release my mind. What's that sound outside? My knee hurts, you know. My legs are going to sleep. You know, I'm really uncomfortable. My back hurts. This is not working. So I felt like I was there for maybe 3 minutes. And so I got up and looked at the clock again. And an hour had passed. And I thought, no way. No way was that an hour. And so I didn't think much about it. I just considered it to be an anomaly or something. And then it happened again. And it happened again. And I was losing blocks of time. And I can't account for them. I don't know what was happening. But I talked to a friend of mine. We study the Bible together some. And I told her about that. And she said, David, you could be going to some very high places that you don't understand. And you don't remember it because you can't relate. You can't comprehend where you go and what you hear and what you do. Your mind is just not capable of receiving and remembering that. So if I'm losing blocks of time, I quit studying outside in nature. Sometimes I was actually close to cliffs and rivers. So I thought, well, that's not a good idea. If I don't know what happened to me in the last hour. So I moved all of my tithing time inside. And so I felt a lot safer there.
And I always have sort of a theory that, well, if you don't make it, if you die, you're in heaven, no problem. If you're still here on earth, there's still things to learn. There's still things to benefit from, to grow. There's still love. There's still virtues. There's still empowerment. by the way, there's no limit to how much we can grow and become empowered on the inside. There's a limit to how many years we'll live, how fast we can drive down the highway, whatever. There's no limit to how much we can grow spiritually, psychically, mentally, with creativity, ambition, concern, love, morals, values, virtues. Those are all on the inside, and there's no limit. I would have never thought that had I not experienced what I call infinite mind in just 2 seconds, 3 seconds of earth time. So I know for a fact we are all connected to this infinite mind, and we can all make use of it. That's the key. How? Well, meditate. Learn to turn off your logical mind 5 minutes a day. Learn to let your spirituality come through. Learn to think big. Ask your guides for help. If you ask your guides for help, you meditate, and you have good intentions, you'll probably get what you're looking for. And if not everything, which you won't, you'll get a lot more, because intentions and attitude are everything. We can't change the past, so don't drive yourself crazy over that. We can't change other people, so don't drive yourself crazy over that. There's 10 billion things we can't change. Don't drive yourself crazy over that. Think of what you can change. Think of how much you can grow. Think of how much you can learn. Think how much you can forgive and grow and evolve and put things in context. Believe it. Your attitude, your contribution to higher consciousness adds to the collective pool. Nothing has to be in vain. We can learn from everything. And I have been through such severe depression in my life and such grand ecstasy that I've seen both extremes. And I know life is always going to give us cycles. There's going to be tough cycles, and there's going to be very rewarding cycles. But for a fact, we can make the tough learning cycles shorter and more meaningful by the same method as we can make the good cycles longer. How? What's life telling me? If you're not succeeding, if you're hurting, if you're angry, if you're hitting your thumb with the hammer, well, move the hammer, move the thumb, change. You don't have to stay stuck there. So you can make those learning cycles shorter and more meaningful. Things are going good, stretch it out. You know, if you're the thing you're doing is working, do it more every day and get better at it. We are not stuck. Nothing is in vain. Everything can have meaning, and you can learn from everything. But we have to turn our fears around. We have to turn our worried minds off. It's proactive. Ask and you shall receive. That's true. We don't get everything. Knock and the door shall be open. It's true. Not everything. But the more we decide to work on, and the more we ask for guides to help, and the more we have good intentions, and the more we do our part, practice, because everything in life comes because of decision and practice. On the achievement side, we're going to get accidents, we're going to get curveballs, but we can learn from those too. So my message is, stay empowered. See the light in yourself, see the light in other people. There's no limit to how much we can grow, but it is a constant process. And just like we have to change the oil in our car, we have to change the way we think. And we have to do it proactively, just like we have to take our car to the mechanic to get the oil changed.
The first thing to do is learning to be grounded. And as much as I look at Eastern teachings, they never talk about this. Because I think these teachings were developed by people who were walking around barefoot and sleeping in the same bed with their parents till they were of a certain age, and were really connected with the earth. And nowadays we're in automobiles, we're in front of computer screens, we're doing things that keep bringing the energy up. The energy is always going up. And you and I, and probably a lot of the people viewing this, make our livings by being able to make very skillful distinctions in our minds, which is a great thing to do, to use the mind as a tool. But often people get lost in the mind, and particularly when anything difficult happens in life, particularly a life-threatening circumstance with you or someone you love, we start thinking about it, what can we do, what can we do, rather than being able to drop down and become embodied. So to become grounded, there are traditional grounding exercises where you visualize your energy going out through the base of your torso into the earth. Okay, so we have this support, grounded, centered, lower body stable. Then the heart can begin to open. The heart can remain open. The heart can flow, regardless of what pain is in the body or joy is in the body or what person is in front of you, somebody that loves you deeply, somebody that doesn't like you. You're not depending on who's out there to have an open heart. You're not depending on what your body feels like to have an open heart. And then the wisdom mind begins to open. And let's just imagine that our mind is like the sky. Certainly, almost all of these traditions say that the awakened mind has the quality of emptiness, emptiness of self, vast spaciousness, boundless mind. But until we get there, until we get the complete awakened mind, let's imagine that our mind has a chunk of sky that's bounded by a window frame. And into this window frame comes a cloud of happiness, a cloud of anger, a cloud of fear, a gray cloud, a black cloud, whatever. But if the cloud is big enough and the window frame is small enough, all we see is anger, fear, happiness. We identify and say, I am happy, I am angry, I'm frightened. But if through these practices where we have a strong enough foundation and the heart opens enough, then the window frame gets bigger and bigger. That same size cloud can come. And it's a very different experience because the cloud is now contextualized in the blue sky. And we see that it's moving. So that instead of saying, I am afraid, we say, oh, fear is here. Fear is coming and fear is going to go. We don't know how soon it's going to go, but it's a temporary changing experience. I really can't train people to do this. I can show techniques. We can explore attitudes. We can talk about what might be blocking these things. But really, it is how much in your life you have been willing to be alive. You have been willing to confront your own fear of death. Walt Whitman said, sometimes touching another human being is almost more than I can bear.
What did he mean by that?
Well, what I think he meant by that is, I've had the experience, and I would strongly guess that you have too, that sometimes we're so alive that when we touch another human being, the love is almost unbearable. Mm-hmm. That there's so much life, that just being with another human being there's so much life. And yet, how often do we feel that? How often do we feel that joy? How often do we, on the other hand, take our partner for granted or ourselves for granted? Believing the voices in the mind that say, oh, you're not quite good enough, you made this mistake, or you ate a little bit too much yesterday, or whatever the mind is telling you. And if in fact we can get this intimate relationship with death, then it can jar us into that quality of the unbearable lightness of being, or this unbearable quality when we look into the eyes or touch another human being. Or even better, when we can do that with ourselves. And the other thing that I found in my teaching, Rick, is that a lot of these practices, like compassion, for instance, are traditionally taught as learning to have compassion for the other. But really in the West, most of us also need to have compassion for ourselves. There's a practice called taking and sending, Tonglen, maybe you've heard of it, but it's really taking the suffering of another and being willing, feeling so much compassion for someone that you're willing to take their suffering into your heart of compassion and give them that which is most precious of you, your loving kindness. But what I have found is that for many people, it's very useful to learn to do this for ourselves, so that rather than using meditation as a practice to get calmer and more efficient in things, I use meditation as a healing practice, that we begin to uncover these habitual conditioned patterns. I mentioned before I had those shocks. So I would notice that as I go to meditation retreats, there's a lot of my distracted thoughts are about planning how to not get the next shock, planning how to be safe. And for a decade or two, I would go to long retreats. I'd get calmer, I'd feel better. And I'd have a thought and I'd say, here's a thought, come back to the breath or whatever it was. And the thought would go away. But then I'd come back into the world and those planning thoughts would keep arising. I finally noticed after doing this grounding and centering work that there was this part of me that didn't feel safe. And if instead of just watching each individual thought and losing the forest for the trees, I began to do compassion practice for the part of me that didn't feel safe, that after only a day or two of doing that, this unsafe place started to relax. It felt met, it felt embraced. So that even that question before we were talking about, can the neurotic person be enlightened? As long as this neurosis was preventing me from being present and kept throwing out these habitual unconscious thoughts, no, I can't. So what I needed to do then was begin to bring compassion toward this part of myself, embrace with kindness and mercy this part of myself that I had been trying to get away from in the service of, hey, I'm a meditator, I shouldn't be having all these thoughts. The thoughts were trying to tell me, hey, pay attention to this place that you've been avoiding for so long. And that even distracted thoughts are messages, are blessings that are pointing toward what can be healed. What is arising right now is what is the quality that can be healed. So that I began to notice in my meditation, particularly when I'm at a retreat or it's getting really, really deep and quiet, that there would be a sense of spaciousness, awakeness, presence, aliveness, the beloved. And then a thought would arise. And I'd be aware of the thought after a short amount of time or not so short amount of time. And the awareness would quiet the mind and there would be that spaciousness. And I'd go through that cycle of spaciousness, thought, awareness of thought, spaciousness, thought, awareness of thought. And I began to notice that right before I had the thought, there was fear of death. In a very, very, very subtle way, that there was part of me that believed, my ego structure believed, that as long as I was thinking that the ego, who I believed myself to be, was real, that I was reifying myself, so that in a way, meditation was learning to die. And if I'm not grounded and centered, that's going to be pretty scary. If my heart's not open, that's going to be kind of impossible. But coming right to that edge of being able to let go of believing that I'm somebody separate and being afraid that I might disappear, and bringing love and embrace to that place, to me was what really transformed my meditation practice into non-practice, into resting in presence.